universal wisdom, shine your love on us. Beautiful souls, unity in love, spirit and angels watching over us.
Also, back in about 1982, when we were still living in that house where the blue orb was, my dad had left, like I said, and he was only giving us about $400 a month for child support, and that money went towards the roof over our heads. And my mom wasn't working. She had never worked. She was a stay-at-home mom from the time that she got married. So yeah, she wasn't working, and we wouldn't go on the welfare system because my mom felt like that wasn't how do I explain this? I guess she just felt like it wasn't God's will to go onto a state-run program, that she would just trust in God to provide for our needs. And so we were here without money for our PGE bill, and it was about $100. I believe it was exactly like the certain amount. And we needed the money to pay the bill. And so my mom brought out water and bread, and we prayed over the water that God would, bless it like he had turned the water into wine in the Bible. And she said that the bread was for our physical needs and the wine was for our spiritual needs, and we were going to pray that God would bless us spiritually and physically. And after we had prayed that we would receive this money that we needed as well, it was all at the same time. The phone rang, and it was the pastor from the church. And he had asked my mom if we needed $100 for any reason. He felt like God had told him that he was supposed to give us $100. And my mom had said, yes, we need that for our electric bill. So that was also a very specific synchronistic event, I guess. Things that you can't really explain. He'd obviously had a psychic ability. He heard something from God, and so something else that I wouldn't be able to explain on its own. There was also in high school, going back to high school now, I was home alone with my mom. This would have been after I graduated, actually, or very late into my senior year of high school, where I was in the living room with my mom. I was sitting at the table. We had the living room and the dining room were a combined room, and there were two large windows in that room. And this is the same room where my dog Perk had heard the noises, and it alerted me to what was going on outside. So the kitchen, living room, dining room, it was all a combined area, where the kitchen was open with an island-like bar. And I was sitting at the dining room table, and my mom was sitting in a chair, and I got this strange feeling, gut feeling, like I was being watched. I got so nervous. I got up from the table and walked into a different room, and just had to sit there and kind of feel clean. I felt gross, just very gross. And so I was like just trying to calm down, because it made me feel very uneasy. So I was trying to calm down and just try to figure out, okay, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling like this? And within a few minutes, after I had walked into the other room, I felt, I'd been in there a while, I guess, because whoever was outside had to have enough time to walk around the outside of the house. It wouldn't have taken them very long, because it wasn't a big house. It was an old 1900s farmhouse that had been remodeled on the inside. And I started to feel this sick feeling again on the inside. So I walked back into the living room and I sat down at the dining room table and I looked at my mom, and she was reading her Bible. Like, she was just head down reading her Bible. And I looked at her and I said, I feel like somebody's watching us. I don't feel good. And she had said she had felt that same thing. Within a few days from that timeline, our house got broken into. And my sister and my brother had left at this time. They were no longer living there. So it was just my mom and I. But our house had gotten broken into, and it was during the day, which was weird. It was, I know exactly, my mom had gotten home from work and we needed to head out and get some shoes. We were at Payless Shoes. It was just a quick run up to Payless, probably 6 miles away from where we were. We were maybe gone an hour at the most, and came home, and the home had been broken into. And this particular time, the landlord had driven by and seen a green car in front, and he was colorblind, so he was like, I can't really tell if it was green or if it was blue, or the exact color of it, but he tried to describe it to us. He had driven by on his way home from work, and went and picked up his wife. They lived up the street from us, not too far, and they drove back together and went through the house to make sure that it was safe. But we had gotten home from there, and the house had been broken into. So they were obviously scoping the place out while my mom and I were home alone. Another time where I had a deep premonition was we were over at my grandma and grandpa's house, and they lived on the coast. So we were, miles away from home. It was about a 2.5 hour drive to get to their place. And we were over there probably for Thanksgiving. It was Thanksgiving. So here we are in November. And about 6 o'clock at night, we had already finished up dinner, and I got this very sick feeling in the pit of my stomach, like we needed to get home. We just needed to get home. And so I went into the dining room where my mom was at, and I had told her, I said, I feel like we need to get home. I don't feel right. I feel like something's wrong. We need to get home. So we left. And when we got home, the lights were all on in the house. And we had left early in the day, so we didn't leave any lights on in the house. And my mom, we pulled into the carport, and my mom had said that she would go into the house. I would stay in the car, and I couldn't do that. I wasn't going to let her. It would be better for two of us to go in together and see what we were to encounter than to have one of us out there alone. The back door was busted down, and the house was, no one was in the house, so that was good. But we weren't rich. I mean, it was so weird because we didn't have a lot of things. We didn't own a TV even. The things that they took were used candles from my sister's wedding, a jewelry box that my brother had made me when he was in the 7th grade, costume jewelry that we had purchased at Newberry's. I mean, these are like dollar items. And the majority of the stuff that was taken were things from my room. Some of my mom's, like some little agates that she had were taken. But the majority of the stuff were things from my room that didn't really have a whole lot of value other than to me personally. And so one of the things that I had wondered if, when I was in the senior year of high school, I would get off the bus and walk home from the bus stop, which was not that far, but far enough. And there was always this green 280ZX, older guy, gray hair, like salt and pepper gray hair that was kind of long and scraggly. He would pace me in his car, and I made contact with him eye contact with him a couple of times, and the guy was spooky. And I did end up telling a couple of my friends, and they drove, and so we tried to, one of my friends that would drive me home from school after that, and we would wait in the driveway for him. And when he passed by, we tried to follow him to get his license plate number, which I did eventually get. And I gave it to another friend, and she told me where the guy worked. So I called the police, and the police, they were upset that I hadn't told them sooner. But if you understand, if you ever read the book Educated, the whole idea of, we grew up in this home that was very sheltered, and we had this ideal concept that God was going to take care of everything for us. So we didn't depend upon the state for things, like I said earlier. We didn't go to doctors. And calling the police to take care of this, I was embarrassed. Honestly, I was embarrassed about the whole situation and very nervous at the same time. So here I am laughing while I'm explaining to the police what's happened, and they probably think I'm a complete knucklehead. Like, this is a serious situation and you're laughing it off like it's nothing. And he was really upset with me that I hadn't come to him sooner. So, but that's the reason why I didn't, because we didn't rely upon anything outside of God to take care of us. So, yeah, that's why. So there was another premonition before that break-in. And then the next premonition that I had, I was married at that time. It was 1996. It was on my anniversary, our wedding anniversary. We were going to go camping with a bunch of our friends, and about a week before we were supposed to go camping, we also, did four-wheeling out with our friends, and I felt not a sick feeling, but just a deep knowing that we weren't supposed to be going. Like, every time I would think about going, I'd get this sick feeling. And excuse me, it wasn't a sick feeling. Like the other times that I had premonitions, it made me sick to my stomach. This did not make me feel sick to my stomach. This just was a heavy heart is how it felt, like just a very heavy heart. And I had told my husband at that time, I just don't feel like we're supposed to go. I don't. And he thought I was crazy, because he didn't listen to me, and he tried to just brush it off like it was nothing, like I was just making things up. And the only person I knew that would really believe me was my mom. So I called my mom and I said, I feel like we are not supposed to be going on this trip to the coast to go camping and to go four-wheeling. And I asked her to pray with me. So we prayed about it, and we went ahead and went anyway. And that night we ended up in a car accident. We had stopped around a bend, and the coast is here in Oregon. It's hills, big hills with lots and lots of trees, and we had come around a corner where it was completely in the blind by anybody coming up behind us, but we had to stop so we could cross traffic to get to the location where we were going to go camping. And a tractor trailer, big semi truck hauling cows, came around the corner, smashed into the back of our truck. And when the paramedics showed up, neither Aaron nor I were in we didn't have severe injuries. We could still get up and walk. I mean, we obviously had muscle issues and a lot of pain, but we didn't have any broken bones. And we were still able to get out and walk around and stuff. Although they did tell me I needed to sit back down and not be walking around. When the EMT showed up, one of them had said, if he had pushed you 3 feet further, you guys would have been off the cliff 100 feet down. So that was a premonition, and knowing, the knowing of what could have happened if I hadn't known that and prayed. So protection there. Then getting into ghosts. Obviously I had told you guys about the story of when I was a year old. My daughter, when she was about 2 years old, woke Aaron and I up crying, frantically crying, just really upset. And he and I ran into her room. She was still sleeping in a crib. We looked down upon her and asked her why she was crying. And she had pretty good communication abilities at the age of 2. She would talk in short sentences. And she had said that R2D2, and she pointed above her, R2D2, red eyes, R2D2. And that freaked me out. She had seen something like R2D2 above her bed with red eyes. And even now, she remembers and obviously can describe it a whole lot better, but she definitely said that it did look like an R2D2 above her with red eyes. She still remembers that. In that house, the bedroom door to the master bedroom, where at night the door would open, and we never shut the door completely because we wanted to make sure that our daughter could come in and go as she pleased. And the first time it happened, I thought for sure it was Daylin, and it was not. So the door occasionally, not often throughout. It wouldn't be like many times throughout a night. It would be like once or twice throughout a week, where the master bedroom door would swing open and then slowly close. One time I had gotten home from grocery shopping and walked into the back mudroom area, which was connected to the master bathroom. And I didn't look in the master bathroom. I just walked into the kitchen, but I thought, wow, there's a different kind of light in the house. And I looked from the kitchen into the mudroom and into the master bathroom, and I noticed that the shower curtain, rod and all, had fallen. And we had been living in this house for probably 3 years, and never once had we experienced the curtain rod falling and or even shifting at all. It was very secured to the wall. And I thought, that's weird. That's really bizarre. At night also, I would hear a young child crying, and the first time I heard it, I thought it was Daylin. And I went into her room and she was sound asleep, not crying at all. And I had told Aaron about this, and he just brushed it off like I was hearing things at night. But then one time he woke up in the middle of the night, and I was already laying in bed hearing this and knowing it wasn't Daylin, because I'd gotten used to what this sound was. And he had said, Daylin's crying. And I said, no, that's not her. And so he got up and went and checked on her and came back, and he said it wasn't her. And I said, I know, I told you it wasn't her. And I had gone to the neighbors, one of my friends in the neighborhood, and asked them, or was telling them about what I was experiencing. She says, oh yeah, there's a ghost in the neighborhood. And it was a small community, a very small community of manufactured homes on it had been a manufactured home park, and we had all purchased our own properties with this. They had subdivided the properties. So I want to say at the most there might have been like 30 to 50 homes in this park. But my friend had said, oh yeah, my daughter's friend up the street encounters these kinds of things in their house all the time. So there was something in the neighborhood that people were experiencing this. When I got a divorce, there was another situation where I was taking care of an elderly man in his home who had Parkinson's, and I would take my daughter with me. She was 2 at the time. I would take her with me, and just so weird. So they had a front entry with an armoire in it that had toys for kids in it. And I'd never encountered this until, one day, but after this one day, it continued to happen. Anytime Daylin needed to use the bathroom, and the bathroom was attached to the front foyer, it was a big house, big old style colonial home. This toy in the closet would giggle and laugh, and it was one of those dolls that I guess maybe you pull the string in the back and it would giggle, or maybe you would shake it or something. It would only happen when Daylin would walk by to use the bathroom. I could go into that room, leave the room, it never happened with me. But when my daughter would go through there, it would set off, and she was so terrified of that. And I, of course, then was starting to become fearful too. I was like, that is just bizarre. Yeah, I got upset one time. I was really upset about this whole thing, angry. Like, this is stupid. So I opened up the armoire and was digging around looking for things, and there was a bunch of toys in there, but nothing that was battery operated that would go off on its own, or something that would be motion sensitive. So I was like, okay, well, whatever. Whatever. Like, I'm done with this stupid thing. So I didn't give it any more thought, but it continued to happen. The other time, after my divorce, was living out in a different town about 15 miles away in an apartment, and in this apartment, one night I was woken up by the sound of footsteps on the carpet, and I was home alone. I had a boyfriend that I lived with, and he worked nights, so I was home alone. And at this time, I don't believe that my daughter, she stayed with me every other week, and I don't believe that she was with me at that week. No, she was not with me that week. And I heard footsteps on the carpet, woke up to it, and froze, and just tried to adjust my eyes. I opened up my eyes. I'm trying to adjust my eyes to the light. It's dark in there. I can't see anything. I'm hearing this. And then, so I'm like trying to calm myself down. I'm trying to think of anything that this could possibly be. Some kind of a critter that got in. And I'm thinking there's no way a critter that big could have come into the apartment. I always made sure that the doors were locked before I went to bed at night. We had a sliding glass door that was bolted and had the stick in it. There was no way that anything could have gotten in. And when I had calmed down enough and I couldn't hear the sound anymore, I got up and turned on some lights and walked around. There was nothing in the apartment. The other thing that would happen in that apartment I'd wake up to black spiders in my bed. you know, they weren't big. They were little. They were medium sized, kind of small medium, but they weren't huge. And they would be dead. Like I'm saying, like maybe between 2 and 5 throughout this time frame. I would every night I'd wake up and there'd be dead spiders in my bed. I also found that to be very odd. I had a feeling like when I would sit and just be in my space in the living room, and I slept in the living room on a pull-out couch, kind of like a hide-a-bed. That's where I would sleep. And at night, if I would just sit and be in my peaceful state on the bed, I had this sense that it was an older woman. She had a rocking chair in the corner of the room, and she would sit and watch me. That was my feeling that I had, like this sense of feeling that I had. And I remember having a thought conversation with her, and I was going through a lot of grieving process at the time. My divorce was still processing. There was a lot going on at that time, and I was in a deep grieving. And I remember telling this older lady in my thoughts, I'm not here to upset you, and I would really like your help. I could really use your comfort right now, and I need your help. And I never felt fearful of that entity or being or whatever anymore. And it wasn't like I could visually see her with my eyes. I visually saw her in my mind's eye. And then my daughter, when she stayed one time, had told me that she had heard an older lady coming down the hall in the middle of the night, coming down the hall calling out for Zoe. And she woke up to the sound of someone calling out for Zoe. And then on a Saturday night, when my boyfriend was home, we were both sound asleep in the living room, and he woke up to the sound of footprints on the carpet. And he woke me up and said, someone's in, that's what he said. He said, someone's in the house. I heard footsteps on the carpet. And I said, oh, yeah, I heard that the other night too. It's just a ghost or something. But he turned on the lights and looked around. There wasn't anything in the house then either. So I knew it wasn't just me. Those stories had been collaborated by more than just myself. Then there was another place that my boyfriend, myself, and my daughter lived in. It was a townhouse, and lots of different things would happen there. Where a TV that I had, it was a small TV with a DVD player in the top where you just stick, and I use that for my workout videos. But that little TV was in my daughter's room, and she would often complain that the TV would just come on by itself and be on that static gray and black white screen with, it was just moving static, which shouldn't have been that way because I always had it set to DVD because I worked out, and it was the blue screen. It should have just been the blue screen. And I've heard stories, especially with kids who are going through their preteens, can have energy that sets things off. And so I thought, well, maybe my daughter just has a special energy about her that's creating some of this weird electrical stuff. But one time when she wasn't with me, I had gone upstairs, and upstairs on the landing, her room was here, my room was here. Okay, so her room, my room, and I had looked down the hall towards her room, and the TV was right there at the front of the door, and you could see the TV, and the TV is on, and it is the gray screen, gray and black and white, just across the screen. It gave me chills. I was like, oh, ugh. I went in there, turned the TV off, and went to bed. But it's just creepy stuff. Another time, The three of us were downstairs watching TV, and underneath the TV wasn't too high off the wall. And so underneath the TV, we all saw this light, like electrical current. We could see the electrical current through the wall, and it was red and orange and blue, and you could see it traveling. The electrical current, you could see it traveling, and you could hear it. The whole staticky sound. It was so weird. And then it traveled down the wall and into the kitchen, where we heard this big pop, and the socket blew. The light switch in the kitchen no longer worked. We actually had to call maintenance to have that get fixed, and the light in the kitchen had gone out. But we all saw that. And then another time, I had gotten into bed, and I heard this scuttling, scurrying sound, like a rat in the wall or something, but it was pretty big. And I was laying in bed, and I could hear this, and my boyfriend was in the room too, and he obviously heard it as well, scuttling, scurrying, and it went along the base of the room, and then up the wall and over the closets, and left the room. And I'm just sitting there trying to figure out what this sound could be. And within a minute or two, my daughter is calling out in terror, "Mom!" So I get up and go into her room, and she said, "I woke up to someone, I thought it was you at first, looking over me. And I thought it was you at first." And I said, "Mom," and then I looked again, and it wasn't you. It was this being in a black cloak, like a cloaked figure. I don't know. I don't know. These are the unexplained. These are things that have happened to me personally where I go, Another time was when I worked with a girl, and she and I were friends, and I had we were in the conference room, I and another lady that was also a friend of mine, and she had her office in the conference room. So in the corner of the conference room, she worked, and she was the IT person, and I was having a conversation with her, and my friend was at the conference room eating lunch. And out of the blue, this friend changed her voice and said in a chuckle, "I am the Antichrist, ha ha ha." And this other lady and I looked at each other, turned around, looked at this other friend of mine, and we're like, "What?" And she said, "Oh, nothing, nothing." I had quit that job, and I was on the phone with this friend who had done this about a year or two before. And I was talking to her, and this is not probably about a year after my son had died, and I was really on the up end of my grieving process, and really deeply involved in reading my Bible and journaling and seeking truth. And I was talking to her on the phone, and her voice changed on the phone, and she had said, "Oh, so you think you're a child of God?" And her voice changed completely. It was the weirdest thing. And I started having this conversation with this other being over the phone. And it was this thing was taunting me and talking to me, mocking me, and I would come back with a reply from the Bible. And when my friend came back on the phone, she said, "Oh man, I have the worst headache. I feel so sick, and I have the worst headache." And I said, "Are you serious?" Because at first I thought maybe she was just toying with me and playing around with me. And when I realized that she wasn't just joking around and playing around with me, I told her, I said, I think you might have a possession of some kind. And she said, oh, yeah, that's true. I had done a seance with some friends of mine, and this creature, this being, this entity had come out while I was doing a seance and entered me, and my friends tried to cast it out and get rid of it, but I ended up fighting my friends, and they ended up injured, and they had to leave me there, and I had to go home on my own. So I told her, I said, well, I'm going to come over and I'm going to pray with you. And she said, no, you can't do that. You can't come over here on your own and do that, because I would probably end up hurting you and injuring you too. But I really had a very firm, solid belief that I would be protected by God. But regardless, I listened to her. And I called a charismatic church. At this time, I was going to the Baptist affiliated church, and I didn't know if Baptist affiliated people were into demons and stuff, like what they believed. I figured they probably wouldn't believe me at all. And so I called a charismatic church, and the charismatic church told me to go ahead and call my own church first, and if there wasn't anybody there who could help, to call him back. So I called my church, and there was actually an elder there who was familiar with this. And I called my friend back and said, okay, I found somebody at my church who's willing to pray with you. You can come over to my house and we'll pray for you. And she was willing to do this. So for somebody who would have just been toying around and playing around, there's no reason why they would follow through with that. They would have just said, oh no, that's okay, I've taken care of it on my own, or whatever. But my friend was seriously wanting help. And I went and picked her up and brought her to my house, and we prayed over her, and she was healed. So another very weird, odd situation that I couldn't explain on my own. So just strange paranormal metaphysical things that I've had. I'm sure that many people have had these experiences, and they're enough for me to say I do believe that there is a higher source, call it universe, call it God, call it love, call it whatever you want to call it. I do believe in a higher power. I don't know. Knowing what we do know now on aliens and things, who knows if this is all extraterrestrial related? I don't know, but I do know that love exists in such a profound way that it can change someone's life completely and bring them joy and peace and deep, deep love. So thank you for joining me today. If you have anything you want to comment about, leave comments for me. I would love to hear them. Please like and subscribe. I'd appreciate that too. Appreciate you so much. We'll talk soon.